Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Inside Out Self-Love and Body Positivity panel. We are so happy that you're all here, and for those of you who are watching us in TV land, thank you for tuning in. We are so excited to be a part of Lincoln Calling. This is 2019 Lincoln Calling. I think this is the 16th year. Lincoln Calling has always been a music festival that incorporates art and wellness and innovation, and we're very, very lucky to be able to join together with so many experts and so many innovators to discuss some important topics relating to wellness. Today, we will be talking about self-love and body positivity. These are words that I'm sure you've all heard. They are having a moment, but we wanted to take a moment to really dive in and figure out what it means. What do these words mean, and how do we actually practice these things? And what do these journeys look like in real life with real life people behind these words? So today we'll be talking about these things with our wonderful panelists, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves to you. But first, maybe let's just welcome them and show them how much we love them. Miss Brienne.
Hi, right here, okay. I'm Brienne Key, massage therapist, and I own my own massage and healing arts business. I'm from California, but I've been building a life and a business here in the Midwest for about the last 7 years on and off. And that whole time, it's been like a crucial part of my entire healing and self-love journey and trying to find self-worth, cultivate self-worth, and then practice it outward. I'm kind of known as a little bit of a self-care guru because one of the biggest things about any of this is taking care of your mind, body, and spirit. So in my business, I try to hold all of those things in very high regard.
Thank you. Welcome, Brienne.
Hello, my name is Andira Losh. I'm a Lincoln native, a community organizer. I've been at it for over a decade now, let's just say that. I founded Common Root, which is a community nonprofit that provides welcoming and supportive community-run space and resources for education, inspiration, and connection. It's a community building exercise, somewhere you go to feel included and meet friends you didn't know you had. I'm also on the board of Out Nebraska, which is a community advocacy group for people on the LGBTQIA spectrum. We want to make Lincoln a fun place to live, work, and play. I am a metalworker. I make metal jewelry, chainmail. I write poetry. I've been doing poetry as kind of how I discovered myself and found my voice. And I wrote, and I kind of opened up to myself in terms of gender, and I came out, and then I realized that I already had community around me because of what I was doing to build, and that's really where a lot of my self-love journey came from. It's just becoming aware of those inner feelings, reclaiming myself from hurtful cultural narratives that were forced on me since birth, and learning to love myself in a practical way every day. Show myself the same kindness that I show to other people, and not take on the burdens of the entire world all at once. It's doing that, it's finding that space where I can thrive and be the person that I want to be. Just to find my own space and claim that I deserve to be happy too.
Thank you, Andira.
Hi, I'm Fernando. I don't have a beautiful answer like that, but I'm also a massage therapist at Tranquility Salon and Spa here in Lincoln. And by night, I am also a drag performer, Miss Eden Butts. So come see me sometime.
My name is Haley, certified yoga teacher and self-proclaimed self-love teacher. I come from a place of truly believing that we are all survivors of something, if not many things. And you never have to feel shame or embarrassment for how you chose to survive, because we all do the best that we can with what we're given, with the resources that we're given at that time. And I believe that we all have the capacity to cultivate self-love at any time in our life.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm pretty new to Lincoln. I'm a fat athlete and activist and recently became the general manager of Indigo Bridge Books and Cafe. My journey with my body and learning to treat it with positivity is kind of a roller coaster. I grew up in poverty, and sports was a way out of that. That I think a lot of people experience that too. My dad started teaching me to box when I was 3. By age 12, I broke his collarbone, and they enrolled me in Golden Gloves so that I could have an outlet for that. At age 14, I joined as a Title IX wrestler, an all-boys wrestling team in Missouri, and by 2 years later, I was on the women's national team headed for the Athens Olympics when I went in for routine dental surgery and found cancer in my face. So they did an extensive surgery to remove it, and I was extremely fortunate that that healed pretty quickly. But during my downtime, I decided to do something that I'd wanted to do for a while, which was have surgery to remove my breasts. And that went real bad. A white cis hetero doctor got to decide how that would go for me, and it took 9 months of physical recovery before the scars were even healed. It was really tough. So my journey of positivity is all about fighting back from the way that I had punished my body for the harassment that I received and the comments that made me even want to have that done to myself. I can't believe I'm crying this early. Sorry.
You're doing so well.
But now for me, it's all about claiming space for what you need and being unapologetic in the public space that I take up. I'm still a huge believer in athletics. I hike, kayak. I did a shark dive a couple years ago. And I belong in athletic spaces. And still am an athlete no matter what I look like. I was actually fat when I qualified for the Olympics. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Let's welcome them. I want to thank you all so much for already beginning to share part of your self-love journey, some of your body positivity journey. We'll dive into that a lot more, but before we do that, I kind of want to take a moment to find some collaborative definitions for these words that we're going to be working with. So what does self-love really mean to you? And then we'll move into body positivity. So let's focus on self-love. I'll ask the panelists, but also, think about if there's something that's not mentioned that you feel self-love means to you, shout it out.
Start. So I think for me, self-love is recognizing what you need and then being able to take action towards that.
So awareness and action.
Yes.
Great. What else?
I think that self-love I equate with self-acceptance and just acceptance in the world in general, the way that you talk to and treat and process with yourself. There should never be an explanation for that. What you need is what you need, and I think the sooner that we can accept it within us, it's easier for us to demand that acceptance from others.
I think self-love is an internal awareness that I'm not giving everything to everyone, that I'm aware of what I have in me, my own needs, my own emotional state, that I'm cared for, and that I'm putting in the work to myself, and not depleting, but ever working to grow and support myself.
Yeah, I really like that word growth, too.
I feel like for me, self-love would be to take a good look at yourself, but in a non-judgmental way, which I know is super hard for a lot of people. It was very hard for me. But when you harbor those judgments on yourself, you tend to extend that to other people, and you don't want to do that. So it's looking at yourself, looking at places where you need to grow, and places where you're really good too, and applauding yourself for that as well. So it's not like this constant barrage of like, what do I need to fix on myself, and being to accept those in yourself and extend that to other people and give that love and also receive it. So it's validating.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of you, essentially, that self-love is about knowing what you need, giving it to yourself, and meeting your own needs. But I also think that there's a level of honesty involved, because a lot of times what the world tells us is acceptance can kind of cloud our judgment. And sometimes self-love is not, relaxing in the bath, but it's, going out and doing the thing that you're afraid of, and kind of pushing yourself and seeing what you're capable of.
I've read a lot about people kind of trying to figure out that difference between what you need and what you want. And sometimes that is different, and it can be challenging. Anybody else want to add to that? Self-love? What do we think about this collaborative definition? I'm feeling great about it. Anybody want to add anything? Abby. Abby, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Would you mind using this microphone up here? I just got a sign. It's for TV land.
Okay, got you. So hi. I didn't really want to come up here, but I feel like I learned about self-love when I was escaping an abusive relationship, and I didn't really have anybody in my corner. I had become so isolated and didn't have close friends. Didn't really have anybody to talk to, and my family wasn't. My blood family didn't understand and wasn't supportive of me leaving, and so I just feel like self-love didn't click for me until I really needed it, and I just had to find a way to be my own best friend and to mother myself in the way that I needed, and hold myself accountable, but also be compassionate and believe my own experiences and stuff like that. And I wasn't getting that from other people, so I just had to fill that gap. And so that was, I hope you don't learn about it that way, but it was cool. It's cool.
Thank you so much, Abby. Thank you. Absolutely. Self-compassion and giving yourself what you need. Anybody else want to share theirs? Okay. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So we've talked a little bit about, we've talked about self-love, and some of you have talked about acceptance too, and I want to draw a connection between self-love and our bodies. There's so many forces that impact our bodies, and what is physical very much becomes mental. So tell me a little bit about this word body positivity in your own words, and how does that connect to self-love?
I guess I'll start, because I like to put it into waves, because there's a first wave of body positivity, which is that fat people or other marginalized people can become acceptable through diet or exercise. Definitely guilty of falling into that trap myself as an athlete. I'm an acceptable fat person because you can see me run up the street and I'm working out. But there's a second wave, which is our bodies are completely wonderful and acceptable exactly the way they are right now, without having to justify our existence. And so that's what body positivity really means to me is, well, for me, it's feeling like my body is bad A. I know we're not allowed to swear, but it can do some stuff, and that makes me feel awesome. But I also think that my body, the way it is right now, is gorgeous, and I'm attractive, and I'm a lot of these words that I've been cut off from by society without needing anybody's permission to be that.
Yes, thank you.
For me, body positivity is taking that initial message of, it's okay to be trans if you hate your body, if you want to change, and turning that around and saying, no, I accept my body. I don't need my body to be ideal or what I want it to be to love my body and to love myself. And even things that aren't my favorite thing about myself, I can still love. And in the broader sense, I think self-love is learning to love things that I've been taught to hate about myself, to love myself, even the attributes of myself that I'm uncomfortable with, or I think are even problems, to still love myself and to see those negative attributes and to love myself through them and to accept the whole of myself.
In my experience, body positivity, breaking it down to just like body and then positivity, because sometimes it's like, you look good, but you don't feel it. People are telling you, but you're not in that space. You don't feel embodied in beauty or even attractiveness because of being cut off from those words. So even learning what my body was independently as a person just functioning every day, who I was in a sexual space, who I was in my sexuality, those all played into it, and it was all far from positive. It was more in feeling so separate from my body and not even understanding it, finding my positivity through resilience, finding that I am so resilient on the days where I couldn't even get up and look at the sun, and yet I was still getting up and balancing going to 3 different colleges on my own and putting myself through that. Like, there was always something there that was way more dominant than how I felt about myself when I woke up at the beginning of the day. So there was a 2-year period where I banned mirrors because my level of self-worth was so low that I could not look in a mirror without saying 20 terrible things about myself. Like, there was no stopping it. So I just banned them. I knew what all my clothes looked like. I was too broke to shop a lot anyway. Like, I went to fashion school, so I knew if I did size myself or want to add something, look in the mirror, buy it, I'm done. Like, I could not focus on my body at all in order to find everything else around it more attractive. And now I look in the mirror and I'm, feeling my best Lizzo. It's great, but it took not looking at myself for a very long time and just relying on my resilience to get to a space where I could love myself by choice.
My journey with self-love and body positivity is I was a dancer from ages 15 to 25 in a professional ballet company in Philadelphia. And at one point, just the comments about my body, it stopped being about my dancing and more about my body. And I was like, this is not going to be a size 30. Sorry, it's just not going to be a size 30. And it got to a very dangerously low weight. And it was like, I deserve to be on stage. And you've seen me on stage. And
Amazing.
it's like, I deserve to be there. So I'm just gonna walk away. And I'm not paying the price for this. You are. You're paying the price because you don't get me anymore, And it's just kind of backing away and not listening to those voices every day. Kind of like, you're not looking in those mirrors. I don't want to hear these comments about myself every day because they're not even about my ability anymore. They're about how I look. And I'm going to go, and if you're not going to give me a stage, I'm going to build my own then. And that is how Eden was born.
We're so glad she's here.
Self-love or body positivity to me is really about celebrating what our bodies can do. My body has birthed a child. It can walk, it can run, it can dance. And if you can do all of those things, you're so lucky because there are a handful of people that can't. And so really celebrating what our bodies are capable of doing every single day.
I'm hearing some of you all talk about, trying to cut off ourselves from things that are from these forces that are trying to take things from us or put us in places. So I want to spend some time talking about these forces. So be they visible, tangible, or intangible and invisible. How do some of these forces like racism, colorism, sexism, anti-LGBTQ paradigms, fat phobia, how did these things impact you personally, and how have they factored into your journey of self-love and body positivity? We're going to go ahead and go there.
Even as you were saying it, I was
Taking breaths.
Here it comes.
Fernando, can you say that one more time?
It's exhausting to think about all those different factors because they all, intersect and collaborate with each other to be, we can't curse, but crappy. you know.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Brianne, I interrupted you because I
No,
wanted
no,
that
it's all good.
point to be underscored.
Absolutely,
It
absolutely.
takes
He's
labor and
totally
it's
correct.
exhausting.
A lot of my journey with even trying to come into body positivity, self-love, any of it, it started with being so confused that even entering dating, I was like, I thought that the highest level of love was being fetishized for being big or being brown or being whatever. And it's just not. But there was nobody right there to tell you how accepting they are of you, that you can actually look for better standards and not just accept, I like chocolate queens. Like, so do I. And also queer. Do you want to talk about that? Like, what are we doing here? I don't know what you need. So even growing very aggressively and very radically with no help, growing into a very strong sense of self-worth also completely affected me sexually and in dating, and is still affecting me, where I can't date just as a woman or as a black woman or as a queer woman or any of that. I am all of those things at the same time, and it is very confusing. It's so confusing. And so all I can really do is rely on my sense of self and the tribe that I have surround myself with for validation that I'm not crazy, and it's okay to be in your mid-30s and still be married to yourself, because I would rather choose that than choose the effery that I was in long before. It just wasn't worth it. I'm worth more than that. We are worth more than that. And it's pretty powerful once you start hearing it and then saying it and then reciting it.
So I grew up here, and I grew up going to a fairly hateful Lutheran church with, standard Midwestern parents, and with a lot of really negative, hateful messages just subtly every day, every week. And I think it's hard to understand the cumulative psychological effect of all that unless you live it. And so for me, growing up here and never seeing any positive models of trans women at all, just snide caricatures, stereotypes, and bad jokes. It's hard to model yourself and to feel like you have a place to exist in the world. And so that's just to grow up and exist in that space and to just really have your insides eaten up and to have zero confidence. It's a hard place to come from there. And I think that's something people don't understand about being closeted, is like when my daily life was anything that I did to escape that space was guarded around by constant microaggressions. There was no point in being myself just to be in endless pain. So when I started to find people who were supportive and have a sense that I could grow into myself, I did. And that took a really long time, a long period of allowing myself to feel safe growing into myself. And that was really hard because not only are there no models accessible to me in the time I was growing up, there's in this history of white cis men analyzing trans women, queer trans women are basically considered fake amongst trans women, which is saying a lot, really. Just saying, even just searching as hard as I could for those models, they hardly existed. So I kind of had to discover myself and create my own self-image, and to find the people around me who would validate the work that I was doing, so really other people around me who were very loving were role models for me. Were role models for me to learn how to love myself and accept myself and to grow. And the more of that I found, the more of that I could reflect and embody myself, the easier it was to develop and become the person that I wanted to be.
It's exhausting. Just to think about, like, I mean, I grew up in a very diverse, mostly Latin kind of neighborhood, so I always felt okay about being Latino. But then you add the machismo culture of that, and then I'm like, hey, I'm like pretty femme growing up, and there's that layer of hatred for yourself, you know, that you have to work through. And so I moved to Philadelphia, and then I moved to New York, and I felt a little bit more of that, you know, I was already on this spiritual kind of body and self-love journey, and then I met my husband. Now, being gay, you know, a lot of gay media and representation is like these really pretty white boys with like these ripped bodies, which I do not have. But my husband does, you know? You know, he's like this tall, you know, bearded, 8-pack abs, you know, and he thinks I'm beautiful, and I'm like, whoa, okay, cool. But then it's also interacting as a couple in the world and seeing how people want to pay more attention to him and don't really want to pay attention to what I have to say. I'm just kind of like an afterthought in our exchanges, and having to explain that to him, and he is seeing it finally. You know, it's been 6 years. But it's just a constant fight. It's just a constant fight. It just gets exhausting, and sometimes I think that's why it's also important for me in my relationship to, and I think, I'm not speaking for everybody, but I think it's healthy to have, you're a couple, but you're also separate people, so just have that time for yourself. And sometimes I just have to back away and just be like, I need a minute, Will, you know, because we just had this whole exchange, this whole public thing, and it was just a lot. But just always having to constantly remind myself, like, I matter, I'm important, and I'm loved. I love myself, and I give that love, and I receive that love in a validating way. But
I'm sorry. Go ahead. It's a similar situation. I am married for 9 years. My worst nightmare. Someday I will be married to an old white man. And he's an attractive white man. He's 6'4". He played football in college, and he is the definition of what you would expect physically fit to be if you looked at someone. And when we do things together, I can definitely tell the difference. People, like he recently started coaching football here in Lincoln, and people just took him at his word that he knew what he was talking about. He does. But they accepted that. Whereas, like, if I'm in a conversation with thin people about diet and exercise, it's almost like I don't even know what I'm talking about, and I do. I really do. And so it's kind of weird to experience that on a constant basis with someone that you love.
It's like every interaction. It's with his friends. It's with his coworkers. I feel so bad saying all this, but it's true. It's with our acquaintances. It's with his family, even sometimes. It's like, ugh, I'm gonna sit this Thanksgiving out, you know, and just like I'm not going.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Experiencing fat phobia is like it's a whole thing. It goes, I mean, it's one thing to see it on TV. Oh, they make jokes about fat people, but they also invalidate you on a moral level. Like, you are a bad person who has made poor moral choices because you're fat, because that must also be a signal that you're lazy, or that you don't work as hard as me. I kind of think the underlying cause of that is people feeling really invested in diet culture and thin culture, and feeling like people who are fat and happy, accepting of themselves, are cheating. They're cheating. We didn't do as much as everyone else did, and we're still happy, and we don't deserve that. That's not fair. And so that's where I kind of think that a little bit of fat phobia comes from, and the root of that. But it's really interesting because people don't want to let you participate in anything. They'll yell at you on the internet to go on a diet or exercise, but if you actually do that in public, they will also yell at you. I experience that on the sidewalk all the time. If I'm like running or riding my bike, people yell out their car windows, like pedal faster, you fat B word. In Lincoln, that's happened to me this week. Just earlier this week. So it's real. It's still happening, and it sucks because I know what I'm worth, and I know what I want everyone else to feel like they're worth. And haters gonna hate, and they can keep doing that. But as long as we keep talking about our experiences and finding value in ourselves, as long as Lizzo keeps making music and being in public, there's a chance. There's a hope that we will all kind of get over this idea that there's an acceptable body, because honestly, there isn't one. If you're fat, you're too fat. If you're thin, you're too thin. The only common denominator is that whatever you are isn't right, and that's so they can sell you something. And classism is a huge ism that we kind of didn't talk about, that no matter where you are in history, the best body to have is the one that's the most expensive to have. And that's on purpose. Like, that's not to, conspiracy theory time. But it's true, it's all kind of connected, it's all intersectional.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. So what I'm gathering from everybody is really a self-worth. What is self-worth? And my personal story, I was abused for many years by my daughter's biological father. Even after the relationship ended, the abuse was still there, and it still is to this day. The mental and emotional abuse that I suffered was extremely painful. I was consistently living in a state of fear and anxiety, which left me paralyzed in my own body at times. And what we try to do when that happens is we try to numb the pain. And unfortunately, we can't, just numb one thing. When we numb everything, happiness, sadness, the good and the bad. So I think, trying to find your self-worth is a long journey. And you're going to go through times of really feeling it, and other times are really not. But knowing that the times when you don't feel it as much, they're going to pass. Nothing's permanent, good or bad. And so, keeping that in mind when we have low self-esteem or low self-worth.
Thank you all so much. Brianne is working through some things
Sorry,
right
guys.
now.
Chest congestion.
So I'm so grateful for all of the topics that you all have brought up within your responses. And unfortunately, we don't have 3 hours to be here, though I would love to be here with you all discussing this for much longer. I do want to talk about things. Fernando, you mentioned it's exhausting to have to deal with these things. Lauren, you talked about the over-commodification of literally everything, and our bodies, and our happiness. And we've also been talking a little bit, we've been skirting around the edge of mental health, too. So I kind of want to spend time talking about those 3 more things, and then we'll turn to the audience. But maybe we'll start with boundaries. I know we have several activists on this panel. We have athletes and performers and parents and partners and roles that you all play that requires energy and requires labor. And I want to know what strategies you have that you use to create these boundaries, to continue to create space to cultivate and grow self-love in yourself, even when you are being asked to show up in all of these different ways, in all of these different spaces. What do you do?
Besides just deal.
Yes, Fernando, besides just deal with it.
I think communicating with your community, relying on the sources that help you move through all of the emotions, all of the processing on a daily basis, because it's constant, especially as you're actively healing. The mental space, the emotional space, and the spiritual space are constantly going. Constant. So I feel like we're all trying to find that balance of how much movement do we need to exert to make sure that we're, still when we need to be still and moving when we need to be moving. And I think relying on our communities, relying on the people that we feel the safest around to be our most authentic self, to take up the most authentic space. And like whatever practices, self-care, bubble baths, or hiking, or music, or dancing, whatever those factors are for each individual person, cultivating strong space for you to just constantly be engaging with those things while you're processing healing or just moving.
For me, I feel that it can be exhausting to claim my space and to assert who I am. For me, part of loving myself is taking that space and rather assertively being out and being myself and not letting people label me or confine me. Because I'm going to be in a situation where I let people make hurtful cultural assumptions about me, and I'm going to feel terrible about myself. So I just put my foot out there and don't let people slap an identity on me. Don't let me don't make me into a stereotype. Because there's this cultural idea that trans women are basically a fetish, and people make a lot of assumptions. They'll assume that I'm straight, and I'm just like put it out there that I'm a lesbian, and I'm saying that right here, so you don't make assumptions and awkward conversations with me, try to set me up with something. No. So I'm just very, very out there, and I just tell people, and I don't give them the time to form negative ideas and to like try to make me something I'm not. So I just put my humanity right there, and people can make their decisions and decide to treat me with respect, or we're going to deal with it.
I love both those answers. As a massage therapist, and where I work, I mostly deal with very wealthy, rich, cis white women, straight. And so when they're on the phone, they're like, they have to ask, are you okay with a male therapist? Which I completely understand. But when they come in, they think they're getting Zac Efron. You know what I mean? It's like, no, it's this sack of potatoes. You know what I mean? Like, it's me. And you can feel it in the air. You can see it on their face where they're like, shit, oh, sorry. Crap, it's this guy. And at first it used to eat away at me, and it still does, because it's every single day that's like, okay, which client is it gonna be, that's going to see me and is going to be like, you can see it, they shrink their shoulders, they make a grimace, they all of a sudden their bubbly personality just kind of shrinks. And, being Latino in a very, very predominantly white state, you're Mexican. I'm Puerto Rican, but to everybody else, you're Mexican. And then you have this vitriol coming from the president saying, Mexicans are rapists and thieves. And I'm like, you're going to be naked in a room with me underneath a sheet, And I feel like, I'm sorry, I just totally spit on you. Like I have to, like, make myself as warm and bubbly and gay as possible so these people know, like, hey, this is not a predator. And that's the point that can get exhausting. But then at some point, while we're conversing and I'm trying to make them more comfortable, they finally see that I'm a human being and I'm not here to hurt them. So I guess my way of self-care, in a way, is also to protect me, to not be looked at as some rapist or thief or someone who's going to hurt you or convert you. You don't catch gay. So it's I guess performance, even more performance to putting it on, and it can get tiring. But I mean, it's that or the alternative is where they leave, and well, I like the money, so it's like I need the money. But inserting myself even more in this space and being brighter and being bigger and being bolder, it's being like, you do know how ridiculous I'm looking right now, so you see how ridiculous you look right now. you know, and that's just the way I try to deal with it, even more performing.
Well, I am a huge fan of therapy. So finding a good therapist is great. And another thing, too, I think is an important thing to remember is when somebody is judging you or you're feeling judged, remember that has nothing to do with you. Absolutely nothing. That is all about the other person. And I think just having that constant reminder, which can also be exhausting. Life is exhausting in general, but just to remember that it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Everybody's made such excellent points. As far as like boundaries and taking care of myself, it absolutely is remembering that it's not about you. A lot of the ways that you feel about your body have nothing to do with you. The things that I experienced and that made me have harmful thoughts about myself are the way other people, the way the world, the way that men who harassed me thought that they should treat my body. That is not my responsibility. That's them. And I'm fine the way I am. They can think whatever they want, and I don't have to engage with that. And it's really important to me to preserve your own kind of personal space and your boundaries. And you know, society is kind of all about tearing down your walls right now and being open, but at the same time, keep those up if that's what's best for you. You don't owe anyone access to you. You don't owe access to anyone online if you don't want to give it, and kind of, you know, protect yourself. I don't show a lot of images of myself online. I'm an illustrator. I draw pictures of myself and I post those online, but not my personal pictures because weird dudes show up in my DMs. And also because immediately, every time, and I encourage you to like kind of check me on this, if someone who's marginalized or someone who's fat posts pictures of themselves online, top 3 comment is going to be, aren't you promoting an unhealthy something or something or something? And you don't owe them space. You don't owe them a platform. Delete those comments, move on. And kind of, you know, you have your own space and you're the boss of what gets said in it.
I wanted to make a quick point about tokenism, as sometimes I'm often enough the only trans person in a space, I'm maybe the only queer person in a space, and I feel this pressure that I have to represent my people well, and that's really hard because I have to push back against that and say I don't exist to make other people feel comfortable. I don't exist for the male gaze. I don't exist to not be threatening or, you know, difficult for other people to handle. I exist for myself, and I claim that space to exist and to be who I am, and not just to live in a box for other people's comfort. And so for me, that's kind of a balance of pushing back in a culture that wants to find some box to stuff me in.
Thank you all so much. I want to move over to the conversation about mental health, and talk about how our mental health and well-being impacts our ability to show up for ourselves, to maybe set those boundaries, to care for ourselves, and to love ourselves. So for those of you who do experience these things, be it depression, anxiety, anything you want to share with us, we'd be so grateful to know how you continue on your self-love journey while also living with these experiences.
So kind of to touch on what I said before of, you know, the fear and anxiety that took over my body was so paralyzing. And it took me to realize that I had to work through those emotions to allow them to physically leave my body so that I could release. And so one of the things for me is when I'm recognizing depression or anxiety to say, okay, I'm recognizing this, what do I need to do right now? And maybe that's, you know, crying in my room for 30 minutes or meeting with a friend, whatever that is, you know, that action to take so that you can get it out, so that you can move past that point.
I remember one time standing up and delivering a poem, and then after I read it, I came down the stage and someone was like, "Come over here, I want to talk with you." And she said, I could feel how depressed you were when you wrote that. And the poem had nothing to do with that. It kind of blew my mind. And before I transitioned and started living and being myself, I was very depressed for a really long time. And so I have that history, and that connects me to other people, and that informs me in the trauma that other people experience. And that, to me, is something that I've grown from, and I appreciate that about myself. And that's something that I can love myself through, that I can appreciate that I survived that. And in ways I can be grateful that I have that experience that connects me to so many people in my life who are going through struggles, and that allows me to help other people. And so even though I was depressed for an extremely long part of my life, I find strength in that, that I survived, and it connects me to other people.
Survivorship is so important, and thinking of yourself as someone who's kind of made it through. It's important to know where you've come from and what you've experienced, and to not minimize that and forget about it or move past it because it's ugly for other people to deal with. That is something like experiencing fat phobia or sexual harassment and assault made me a really anxious person. I was waiting for that to happen around every corner, which is a weird juxtaposition when you're an athlete, especially in a combat sport, where everyone expects you to be really unafraid of everything, and to be like just, really confident all the time. But I also think at the same time, there was no better place for me to be than to be in athletics and to be confident in my own physical strength, because that helped give me mental strength, not because I knew that I could hit somebody else really hard, but because I knew what I could take. The worst thing in the world that could happen, somebody approach me on the street and want to start a physical fight, punch me in the face. I know I'm not going to go down. I know what I can take. So and that's just kind of a metaphor for the overall understanding of our mental health being less fragile than we think, and to be, aware that you can live with it. You don't have to feel like a failure because you're experiencing negative feelings. That does not mean that you don't love yourself or that you're not being positive enough, because that's the cult of positivity, no bad vibes, can be really toxic. Sometimes it's really important to say, I'm so afraid, or I feel really bad today, and to not beat yourself up about having those feelings, and to acknowledge where they come from, and to be honest with yourself about dealing with them.
Thank you, absolutely. We only have a few moments left, and I absolutely want to hear from everyone here. Is there anyone who has any questions for our panelists? And if so, just wave at me, and I will bring you a cordless microphone. Yes.
Hello. My name is Isabel. And so one thing that has been very significant in my journey to be more positive and more accepting of the body that I live in is through finding clothes that I'm excited about wearing. And everyone here looks great. But I just wanted to know kind of what was your journey in finding your way through fashion and the way that you're expressing yourself, because everyone kind of has their own distinct style. And even just looking at you all, I kind of see that it's kind of personifying the way that you speak and your attitudes towards positivity.
I love that you asked that question, because my actual before healing, my first love was fashion. And I went to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising and studied merchandise marketing for a couple of years. But part of that process was just amplifying my love of just going through the campus and seeing all of these couture outfits that were donated from designers over the decades, and also seeing on other floors the final student projects. And if you guys watch Project Runway at all, that whole series is filmed on the LA campus where I went part of the time. It wasn't filming when I went, but it was just great to be around that. And growing up, I kind of channeled my trauma. I distracted myself with fashion and media, like movies and clothes all the time. So even growing up, I didn't even come into my own fashion sense until maybe halfway through high school or afterwards. But as an adult, it's definitely encouraged me. It's definitely been wearing things that I have no business wearing in some people's eyes and just saying, doing it anyway. I don't really feel confident, but the fact that you are silent and just letting me do it, I'm gonna take it. I don't care if it's negative or positive, I'm taking it. You know, sometimes it's for stun factor. Sometimes it's for, I am tired of feeling like crap and putting the stress on, and I don't care what anybody says to me. I just don't care. And sometimes it's finding the resilience in wearing the thing that you don't wanna wear or that you're nervous about wearing and doing it anyway.
So, being trans and having to get a whole new wardrobe is kind of expensive, and that's something like just all new clothes, and you know, at some point going through second puberty and being a 30-year-old teenager is an interesting experience, because I've been through iterations of clothes, and I find like, oh, I think this works on my body, and then my body changes. So I go through that whole puberty in an expedited fashion. And I've talked to other trans people, and they're like, oh, I know what I like. And I'm like, no, you don't. You just started trying clothes, and you're gonna find your fashion, and it takes time to play with your body in clothes and fabric and accessories and jewelry, lots of jewelry. So that is a whole process of learning a different like gender culture, of experiencing the world in a different way and discovering yourself. And so fashion was amazing for me. It was exciting, but at the same time it's super intimidating, because people are like, well, you better be really good at being a woman immediately. Do that right now. And it's like, okay, so we've got like 6 months grace period here to like be perfect. Cool. So you figure out all the clothes, and then there's makeup, and there's like, oh, I've never done any of this stuff, and other people have been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years. That's cool. So yeah, I think it's really important to consider that in people, that people need support. And having gone through that experience, it's very gratifying for me to help other people who are also struggling through that. And that I find a lot of strength in that, giving my struggle a lot of worth, is that I can mine that experience, and I can, again, feel good about being a survivor and having that to contribute to help other people that I love.
I want to just, I don't know if anyone has something else to say about that, maybe do so briefly, because I'd like to do at least one more question from the audience, and then we have to go. But does anybody have anything else to say about fashion?
I wanted to go to fashion school. I wanted to go to FIT, but I chose dance instead. Because I was like, because dancers wear the best clothes. And then I became a burlesque performer, and I said, I'm gonna take my clothes off. I'm just gonna do it on stage. So that's kind of my thing with fashion. I like to take my clothes off a lot. So I've gotten a lot more conservative living in Nebraska than I was in New York. I had very, very short shorts in New York, and I got in trouble on the subway from the police. They said it was a little too short. But yeah, that's my thing. I like to not wear a lot of clothes.
Yes. Okay, last question.
Okay. My name's Emily. Hi. I see like most of you have like visible tattoos. I really want some, but I want to go to law school and I'm terrified. And like, how do you feel like body modification or getting tattoos, getting art like on your body, it kind of like affects your relationship about your body and like how you present it and feel when you like show them off? Nami.
This dress doesn't actually have a slit in it. I made one for this tattoo. No joke. I waited a very long time for this piece,
It's
and I'll be
expensive
darned.
art.
Yes, it is
Exactly.
art. Exactly. And it's
Exactly.
a symbol of my resilience and grace and rage. And I'm like, this, look at it. That's how I feel about art.
Mine is kind of, so I'm an illustrator and I started collecting tattoos that are based on children's books when I published my first book. But at the same time, I get a lot of questions. Like, I have a conservative family. They're like, why would you do that? You've ruined your arm. At the same time, those same people are telling me my arm, because it's fat and weird and has that roll above the elbow, is wrong. So it's gorgeous, and I like it better this way, and I'm super proud of my body modifications because they take a canvas that someone else would easily say is ugly, and they make it gorgeous. And even grandmothers love to see my tattoos because it's where the wild things are, and no one has a problem with that. So it's a little easier for me than other folks, but I think of it as a really important way to be like, this is my canvas, and this is beautiful.
I guess mine isn't as like a strong personal thing. My mom's in the audience right now. I think she's cried at every tattoo I've come home with. But she still loves me. My tattoos I just got because I loved them, you know. I felt like a bad A. We're not supposed to cuss, but it just gave me a little bit of confidence, and I think that's okay, you know, just like your style, giving yourself a little bit of confidence. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm the same way. I really didn't do it I just did it because I love tattoos. My husband's covered in tattoos. I think it's so sexy. So I got them. And I don't really think about like putting on different clothes to like show them off, because I honestly forget I have them, because they don't move. They're not like, hey, I'm here, remember me. You know, they're just there.
I have no tattoos or body modification whatsoever, which sometimes feels strange, especially around all the lovely people I'm surrounded with. I do cover myself in metal. There's a handful of people that I put permanent jewelry on, and that'll outlive us all.
So we have to wrap it up for right now, and we have to go listen to some music, but let's give our panelists a huge round of applause. Thank you so much for sharing with us everything that you shared with us tonight. We love you so much. You make this community better. Thank you. Everyone have a great night.
Bye.
Thank you.